Hello, this is Twinless Twin, and we have a VOD review from one of our patrons. And they have submitted a match or a game they played against Blue Black Control. So let's go ahead and get into this game. So this is, I believe, this is game one. So we see our opening hand. We have a 7-card hand with 2 Murktides, a Consider, a Bauble, an Unholy Heat, and we're on the draw. I would personally mulligan this hand. If we face any early pressure, it's pretty scary. I guess the upside is Bauble does help with Unholy Heat having Delirium quickly. But we don't have like a fetch land, we don't have a sorcery to put in the yard. Double Murktide is pretty redundant early on, which means we're going to be low on resources, essentially. Like we won't be able to play these cards very early on, or one of them. And I think it's mostly just the threat of like we can't heat anything, and we also could just get stuck on 2 lands. Like we have a lot of looks to find our second land, but it just feels pretty risky. We keep though. They play Preordain and pass. We draw Pierce, which is pretty great. I think we definitely need to play Bauble here because we really want to hit our second land. So at this point, I would just Bauble them maybe now, just so that we know what we're looking for consider, because we do want to hold up this Spell Pierce, I think, but we also want to know if our consider is looking for a land or not. And so if we bobble them now and hit a land, that would be nice in terms of letting our consider have a little bit more freedom. If we don't hit a land, we know what we have to consider for. So I would have just bobbled them there and held up Pierce and consider. Sunken Rune. So now I'm not sure what's going on. They did play Sunken Rune Pass, and now they have Bowmaster, I guess. Probably. Yeah, here's Bowmaster. So they play Bowmaster. That's kind of unfortunate. If we had used the Bauble, we might have learned that there were a Bowmaster deck, and we also would have drawn our land, and we wouldn't have had to play Consider there. There was no rush to play Consider if we had our second land. So just some things to consider. No pun intended. And then we also killed the Bowmaster right away. And I think it'd just be better to hold up Counter Spell. I think Spell Pierce hits most of the stuff you're worried about in this matchup, but there's taking 1 extra point of damage is fine. I guess maybe the concern is getting into a counter fight over the heat, because you really want the Bowmaster to die. But Pierce probably protects you on their turn 3. Like they can't really have a 1 mana counter. I guess they could have a Pierce of their own. They also could have had like Force Negation or something. I guess then you can Pierce it. But all right, so we bottom these 2. We hit a Ragavan, and then we play Ragavan. Again, I don't love this. I think that they're pretty obviously going to have some type of play here. It could be, I don't know what they play, Archmage's Charm, Sauron's Ransom, something like that. And then they're gonna follow up with like a 4-drop, like the One Ring, potentially. And so playing the Ragavan here confines us only to Spell Pierce. And I mean, getting the Ragavan down isn't even that exciting because we know it's just going to trade with this Orc army, probably. Or they might have a removal spell in hand because they've had a removal spell their whole game. Like, I guess the best thing this Ragavan is doing is just making it so that they can't attack with this Orc army, or they have to use their Edict so that our Murktide is safe. Maybe that's the case. But also keep in mind that next turn, we might want to play Murktide and then have Spell Pierce up to protect it, or to like counter a One Ring, because we have Spire Bluff Canal tapped. So this turn would be a great turn to counterspell something, so that the following turn we could have Murktide plus Spell Pierce. But now we have to use the Spell Pierce, and we won't be able to have Counterspell plus Murktide up the next turn. They just untap, so that's pretty good for us. When they play the One Ring, we get to spell Pierce it. Maybe they wouldn't have played the One Ring if we had 2 mana open, so maybe we bluff them. And if we draw, okay, um, so we trade here. I don't really think we needed to trade. We already had Delirium. I do like. I think I like passing here. I'm pretty sure I like passing here. There's a chance we can double Murktide next turn if we like counterspell surveil something to the graveyard, draw land or something like that. And playing the Murktide here means we don't have counterspell up, to state the obvious. They did just play a One Ring, so they're less likely to have a One Ring. But oh, what just happened there? What just happened there? Oh, the replay like missed a turn. Okay, that's not ideal. Let's see in the chat log if we can see what happens. So they played something and we counterspelled it. Surveilled an island into the graveyard. And then they pushed our channeler, cast a preordained, scryed 2 to the bottom, drew a card. Now it's our turn. We played a Murktide as a 7/7 and have Force Negation up. Okay. Could we have... We exiled 5 cards, right? Could we have... Oh, they played a Murktide now. We draw Pierce, which is a pretty great draw. We should just play around them having Pierce here, I think. I think I agree with exiling the whole graveyard. Bowmasters is brutal. They get to trade off Murktides now, so that's a pretty good draw for them. We can't even pierce it. They play the One Ring and we get to Fawn, playing around them potentially having Pierce. We draw DRC, so we should definitely be attacking. We can play DRC. They push DRC, attack us. Iteration's a great draw, but they have Force Negation. Okay. Well, still in the driver's seat. We get to keep attacking. Otawara probably doesn't do much, but could. We can actually use it to protect our Murktide, so it actually does a lot here. But we win. Okay. So that is game 1. We win. Now, we're going to go to sideboarding. Skip ahead. And I think Bobby is going to show us how they sideboarded. So Bobby took out Ragavan and took out some Considers and took out a Murktide. So I agree that you should take out Ragavan because of Bowmaster. They have enough removal. I think that that's smart. And you brought in a lot of counters, it looks like. I do not think you should take out Consider in this matchup. I'm not sure if it's because you're afraid of Bowmaster specifically, but I think that cantrips are really, really strong in these matchups because Murktide is often very important in the matchup, so having a lot of ways to dig and fill your yard. There's also a lot of draw go in the matchup, so your mana isn't really punished for spending it on cantrips. You actually will often go turn cycles without spending your mana, especially because you're cutting Ragavan, so you're already saying you don't want to play an aggressive game, you want to play a longer game, right? And you brought in Fury, which I don't understand. I don't know how many Furies you have, but Fury against their deck doesn't really do a whole lot. It really just kills Bowmaster, I guess. Maybe a Subtlety that was hard cast, but again, that's already getting the value. It doesn't even kill Shieldred, which is sometimes a card they have. I expect they cut Shieldred against the Unholy Heat deck because it's just such an inefficient trade for them. It doesn't kill Murktide. So yeah, don't bring in Fury in this matchup either. I think those are my notes. I think Hearse, if you have Hearse in your sideboard, we saw they're playing Murktide, so that should definitely be in your deck. And I wonder if Bobby was giving us audio commentary, but we can't hear it. That'd be unfortunate. Alright, so this hand, first of all, this hand is good. This hand has a couple threats, a Spell Pierce, and some cantrips to start filling up the yard. I like that against them. Their deck is a very much a control deck, and it's not one where we really need removal. Yeah, we should have been cutting some removal spells, I'm pretty sure. I'd probably cut some mix. Probably like cut 2 bolts and a heat, maybe. Or 2 heats and a bolt. You want to have some heats in case of Shieldred, and also heat can sometimes tag Murktide more reasonably. More reliably, I guess. But bolt does have the benefit of burning them out, which I think can definitely also come up a lot. So not really sure how you want to split that. I think having a mix, because like having the 1 heat to hold in your hand is pretty nice, but then you don't really want to draw a second heat generally. They pass to us, and we get to preordain. We put 1 land on top, 1 land on bottom. I think I like that play. It is important to hit land drops in these types of matchups, at least up till 3 or 4. And so topping a land is fine. You could also make an argument for bottoming a land. I think there you made a mistake because you're probably supposed to jam Shredder. Shredder could get pushed. They are repping the push. But are we really going to fight over this Shredder? Let's just go Shredder plus Bobble and Connive. Probably get rid of a land now because we don't need that extra land. Let them push us. And then on 3 mana, we know that their deck doesn't actually have a lot of gas. Like their gas play is on 4 mana, so now going forward we have to be afraid of the One Ring. We do have the Fawn, but obviously it'd be better to Pierce. So I think that was actually a great turn to like fill up our yard. And also if we go Shredder plus Bobble, Connive, ditch the Steam Vents. Next turn we could go like fetch land, play Murktide as a 4/4 with Pierce up. I don't know if this is the best play, but putting a clock on them and having Pierce up and then getting to have Force Negation up next seems pretty tempting to me. So those would have been the lines I was considering. Passing, I definitely am not considering. I think it's very unlikely we use our mana this turn. Even their best 3 drop is like Archmage's Charm or Sauron's Ransom, I believe. And like that's not a card that we can even. They're not going to main phase on their turn, so we're still going to have our mana floated. So I would have just fed them the Shredder, not worried about protecting it. Because we had Bobble, right? Like we get the value from Shredder, get to redraw there. We play a Murktide. We don't even have an answer to Murktide. I mean, yeah, we find Unholy Heat, which is great. We ditch an iteration to the graveyard. I'm not sure I follow that logic. Iteration still very good. We fawn to protect Ledger Shredder. And then we have to. We get Spell Pierced. And then they push our Shredder anyways. So I think you're picking the wrong fight here. Fighting over Shredder when they have like Fatal Push is probably not the fight I would be taking, personally. But we do have a 7/7 against their 6/6, so not all hope is lost. Then they play Shieldred. Okay, they kept it in against us. I believe that's questionable, but we are going to lose this game now. There was a lot we could have done better there in terms of evaluating what our most important threat would be, and sequencing, and also recognizing how the importance of card advantage. Like we discarded an iteration randomly, so those would be my takeaways from that game. I think that game was very winnable. Obviously, hindsight is 2020. Tough decisions to make in the moment, but I wish I could hear what your thought process was just to have a little bit more color as to why you made the decisions you did. But yeah, I think I would have. I think maybe you were misevaluating the threats in your hand. You just bottom iteration, or two top? Okay, yeah, definitely top the iteration. So this is a spot where I think you're right not to play Shredder now because they pretty clearly could have push, and we can maybe protect our Shredder with a Pierce and actually do something here. Bowmaster. I like that you did not go directly for the immediate Unholy Heat this time. Spellbomb, push. They cast. So they cast the Spellbomb and then the push because they wanted to grow their Bowmaster. But then we had. Did we connive away Unholy Heat though? Conniving away on Holy Heat is a bit sketchy because if we double spell with our Shredder too much, we're just growing their Bowmaster. Seems like your plan is just not to do that, but I probably would have connived away like Subtlety, I think. So at this point we should definitely Subtlety this Subtlety, I think. The risk is they could jam One Ring and that might put them in pretty good shape. They do have the One Ring. One Ring to rule them all. But even still, I still think we're in a pretty decent spot because they can attack. I do not think we should block. And then we can play a Murktide with Counterspell up. Oh. Okay, I don't like this. Okay, because now you're trying you're trying to get card advantage, but they have the ring in play, so it's really hard to fight on the card advantage axis in this spot. And what I would be trying to do is trying to get the game over as quickly as possible. Did I miss something? We have we had 4 cards in the yard before the iteration, so we could have played. I can't see your graveyard, which is tricky. I wish I could. But I think we had at least 2 or 3 spells, so we could have played our Murktide and even triggered the Shredder to connive, and we could have been presenting lethal in the air next turn with Counterspell up. I mean, I like the sound of that. We might be getting a little bit rewarded here. One thing you could have done to sequence this better, by the way, is if you cast Into the Fire first, targeting the One Ring, and then you respond to the Shredder Connive trigger with Unholy Heat on Bowmaster, then their guy doesn't grow, right? So you gave them a free extra point, and you attacked them when they have protection, and then you exile the ring. What if they just have another ring, too? Okay, I like playing Murktide here. They might have Drown on the Lock, but they can't. Okay, they have Counterspell. We have Counterspell also. Now they have. Oh man, they have a One Ring on top. Well, that is a bummer. They Archmage's Charm to draw 2, and then they One Ring. I still think we're actually now at this point in like good shape. Okay, we really need to hold this Counterspell up. Yeah. I I almost think it's worth it to not play Shredder to play around them having Spell Pierce, but maybe that's false. So they play another One Ring. I really hope we don't get Spell Pierced. Oh, you let it resolve. Okay. And then they get to activate it twice. Wow. And they get to Fatal Push. Yeah, but we do still have this lethal threat in play. We evoke Fury. I think I'd cast Iteration there. Um, we put Fury on top. We don't really follow that either. We're drawing it off the bobble. We'd rather like take a draw at like another counter spell or something. I don't think we're really hard casting this Fury. Wait, do we actually? Okay, now we. Oh God. The problem is if we let this resolve, we're locked out of casting counterspell this turn. We literally can't cast counterspell. They have double Murktide. That's rough. That is rough. And our top card was a counterspell. We would have just had like counterspell, stern scolding if we had bottomed the Fury. I'm not sure I would have evoked the Fury in the first place, but we almost would have gotten rewarded for it, and we lose. Yeah, tough games. These games have a lot of decisions, so definitely don't fault you for making some mistakes in them. I hope this video was helpful, and if you have any questions, definitely feel free to reach out to me in the Discord. For everyone watching, thank you guys, and I'll see you for the next VOD review.